So let's first kick this off with the big 20th happy birthday to Risk Innovations. Time flies when you're having fun, aren't you?
Innovations. Absolutely. Cannot believe it's already been 20 years.
We're almost legal to drink. Can you believe it?
Somebody forgot to tell me I wasn't quite legal yet.
Well, let's take it back all the way to 2002. And I'm talking about you specifically, Bruce, as the founder of Risk Innovations. How does a accountant by trade transition to starting an insurance wholesaler at a young age? Because that's a very interesting one.
Yeah, certainly not the first time I've been asked that question. And one of the times that came up was when I was with one of my original employees, and we were driving to a conference in Alabama. And he said, whoever would have dreamt that a young kid from Alabama and a Canadian accountant would be doing a work comp wholesaler out of Georgia. So, but as they say, I guess necessity is the mother of all inventions. And effectively what happened was the company that we worked for at the time, parent company out of the Northeast, went bankrupt. And we stepped out, a couple of us, and formed Risk Innovations. And within a couple days, I think, of that transition, I found out we were pregnant with our first. So baby needed new shoes, literally. So if you want a good motivator, start a new business and then find out you're pregnant with your first. Plenty of motivation there to keep you going. But basically, I fell into insurance when I moved to Bermuda in 1995, and Ernst & Young decided I would be in their insurance practice. So I learned all about captives, rent-a-captives, reinsurance, and primarily workers' compensation at that time was running through Bermuda. So I kind of learned the insurance industry, at least the work comp portion of the insurance industry, from the top down rather than from the street level up, which is certainly a different path than most take. So I really just fell into it like most of us do in insurance.
So being 20 years in, obviously a lot has happened, but walk me through some of the milestone pieces that Risk Innovations, I guess in the timeline of Risk Innovations over the last 20 years, what have been some of the real milestone events that have occurred?
Yeah, some really interesting things have happened over the course of 20 years. I'll stick with some of the really interesting and constructive ones, I guess. But,
we don't have 16 hours to go through it.
When you start from ground zero and you're literally writing $0 in premium, and every month you start again at zero, and you start growing something. We were known for workers' comp at the time and had no workers' comp markets. It took us about 9 months to get an AIG work comp contract on board. And that was really the first step in the right direction for Risk Innovations. We really started to grow quickly. And we moved along quite successfully, writing more and more business and bringing more and more contracts on. But we were still a very small firm, and most of the key contracts that we needed in order to take that next step, all those carriers would talk to us, but we weren't having success in getting those contracts. And at the time we said, well, if we're overly reliant upon one carrier, at least it's AIG. Well, boom, that was a problem. 2008 came along, and effectively AIG went bankrupt, and the government obviously stepped in and helped them out. Every single one of those carriers that we had been talking to over the years then decided it was time to give us an appointment. And I believe we went from 3 or 4 work comp contracts to 14 or 15 contracts over the course of the next few months. And that really catapulted us into the next level of becoming a work comp marketplace and not an access point for AIG work comp. The recession, or the Great Recession as it were, became a focal point and a real catalyst for change in the growth pattern for Risk Innovations. We had said that we were overly reliant upon AIG, and that blew up on us. We also knew we were overly reliant upon the state of Georgia. So we didn't want both of those things to continue on, and the second one to become, a problem for us as well. So in 2012, I stepped out and talked with Jeff Sandy out in Kansas City, and probably the best business relationship that I could have dreamt of was founded in 2012 when Risk Innovations and Jeff Sandy merged with his operation out of Kansas City. Maybe you can jump in a little bit on that step there, Jeff.
Yeah, I guess our relationship was probably born via AIG and some of their outings over the years. But yeah, 2010 was an interesting year. I think you had contacted me in the spring, and I think at that time I had just started the operation at TAS and was just getting going, and probably didn't think it was a great fit for me at the time. But by later that year, the owners of the operation I was working for wanted to sell the majority of that book, so we stepped in and purchased that book from them. And time flies when you're having fun.
In 2010, I actually bought out my original partner. And then in 2012, we got together between Jeff and myself. And then 2 years subsequent to that, we bought a small work comp business operation out of Missouri as well that we rolled into Risk Innovations. And then ultimately in 2018, at the end of 2018, we joined GenCap when we sold to GenCap and became part of the whole private equity conglomerations that are out there today, and joined a very good partnership. In joining a PE firm, there's always acquisitions, so you never know if there might be something interesting to celebrate in terms of acquisitions with regards to Risk Innovations and GenCap. Stay tuned. That's all I can tell you, though.
Talk about a good juicy teaser. Okay, we'll just have to wait. So Jeff and Bruce, you all were running the show, didn't have to answer to, well, you had people to answer to, but you were your own bosses running the show for years and years. 17 years into Risk Innovations, what made you all decide to sell Risk Innovations to GenCap?
Yeah, so when Jeff and I started discussing this, what we saw that was happening was we were acquisitive. We were out there actively looking to acquire and to expand into additional lines of coverage, geographically, additional expertise. We were having a good time. We were enjoying things and having some success with those acquisitions, generally on the smaller side that Jeff's pocketbook and mine could handle for the most part. But what we started finding was all of a sudden we were getting to the altar, and then we were being left at the altar for private equity money. And the shift that we saw in the retail agency marketplace was coming home to roost in the wholesale marketplace. And all of a sudden our competition wasn't Bob, Todd, whoever around the country. It was huge private equity firms. And we knew ultimately we wouldn't be able to keep pace and compete with that kind of depth of resources in every way imaginable. So if you can't beat them, join them. And ultimately, it has really turned out to be a wonderful partnership between Risk Innovations and GenCap, and a good fit for us. Jeff, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I recall it, it was more me kicking and screaming not to do it, but you were insistent, and rightly so. The GenCap relationship's been very successful. I'm very, very glad to be part of the family.
Good. Well, you two have been at this for a long time, so I'm interested to hear, over the journey of being business owners and now part of a bigger operation and just having seasoned careers. What would you say has surprised you the most? And I'm keeping that open for a reason, so I'm leaving it to your interpretation. What has surprised you most over the last 20 years?
It's definitely a loaded question. If I think back to when we founded Risk Innovations, and we would comment, if we ever got to write 10 million in written premium, wow, wouldn't that be something? And today, Risk Innovations will eclipse 130 million in written premium. I never would have dreamt that we could probably get to that size, and that eclipsed the predecessor firm that we worked for at the time. That was the monoline work comp, MGU. And I never would have dreamt that we could have gotten there. And that operation probably got close to 200 employees to write that kind of premium Now, albeit we did claims in that operation as well, but today Risk Innovations writes something in the range of $130 million in premium with inside of 30 employees. So the technology and the advancements there have been very much altering the landscape in wholesale brokerage. Another thing that really surprised me over the years and something I learned was the impact of hiring people, whether it be on the good side or the bad side. But a bad hire can set you back years, and a bad hire can run cancerous throughout your operation very quickly. On the flip side of that, a great hire can do just wonderful things. They can move mountains and bring people along with them and really elevate your firm. So if I could go back and do that all over again, I would focus on hiring practices so much earlier in our development than I did. But lesson learned there, we spend a lot of time recruiting and hiring and doing our best to hire the best and keep the best.
What about you, Jeff? What would you say is something that stands out that's really surprised you over the last 20 years?
I think for me, it'd probably be just the continuing softening of the marketplace and the number of years compounding on top of each other with rate decreases. And I guess maybe that makes it one of the more reasons to be proud as well. We've found a way to grow in soft market over the years. And I think for me, looking back, it's just surprised to see that that's continued at the pace it has, and hoping for change in the future. That and the change of the customer base. So with agencies and joining forces and joining larger groups, there's just the change in the customer over the years, over those even 20 years, but 10 years for me with Risk Innovations. Just the change in the number of players, reducing and having less customers to chase, honestly. So,
it's interesting. You touch on the never-ending soft marketplace in workers' comp. Had this marketplace existed in 2002, it's almost certainly Risk Innovations never would have come to be, never would have come to pass. Because I remember looking at the state of Florida, and the state of Florida was going through a rate reduction over the course of 3 or 4 years, and rates dropped 50 to 60%. And our competitors in Florida started disappearing. They were selling, they didn't know how to compete, they didn't know how to keep their business afloat, and they just all disappeared. So for that reason, we've never become a big player in Florida. But when I look at the marketplace today across the country, those numbers have played out in virtually every state across the country. And somehow we've figured out how to continue to make this work, and we continue to find our little niches in the marketplace, which is definitely satisfying and definitely challenging. So I'd like to think we're a whole lot better at what we do today than when we started 20 years ago, for sure.
Well, you guys also have an incredible team of people at Risk Innovations, some of which have been with the company for almost since the beginning. Why don't we call out a couple of those individuals who have really been instrumental in the success of Risk Innovations over the years?
Yeah, there's no doubt that we couldn't have done this on our own. The team of people that we've put together here at Risk Innovations should really be proud of themselves. I know we're very proud to have this team. I've been able to take on additional responsibilities within GenCap because these people do such a great job on a day in and day out basis, servicing our agency base and as well as our carriers.
Yeah, since the conversion to Risk Innovations, including Mindy and Jackie and Jim and Kathy and Rebecca. So we've got a nice list that have rolled along with us over the last 10 plus years.
And I know these two ladies will hate that I mention them, but Tanisha loves to say that, she's still a kid, but she's been with us well in excess of 10 years, might be in excess of 15 now.
It is in excess of 15.
I thought so, yeah. But she loves to tell me how old I am, so now that she's been around 15 plus years, she's creeping up on it too. Our longest tenured employee at Risk Innovations is Cheryl Crandall, who's working with our sister company in Personal Lines, Quaker Special Risks today, but technically still with the entire GenCap group, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention her. I would hazard a guess she's up in the 17-year range, if I'm not mistaken. So having those key people in place and having a stable base of employees that know their job and are passionate about what they do, I think is critical to our success.
What would you do differently? Another loaded question for you.
Where to start? Wow. Yeah, well, I know first thing I would do is I would look a lot closer at my bookkeeper.
Oh boy. Yeah. There's a story that definitely should be told. A tale to be told, unfortunately. Bruce learned the hard way, but many people watching this video haven't heard this story, so why don't you tell them what happened, relive it.
Yes, one of the joys of my career. It's certainly a proud moment for me and for Risk Innovations. But we had an accountant who started with us, or a bookkeeper, I should say, right out of the gates. And one of the partners was very familiar with her and vouched for her, and so away we went. But the numbers never seemed to be quite right. And as one of our retail agents commented, that sure was a lot of Snuggies that she took home. But unfortunately, she was fraudulent from day one, and made it difficult for us to really get off the ground. And we'll leave the numbers out of it, but it took us about 7 years to figure things out ultimately. And I guess I am proud to say that I finished that story and made sure that she spent time in jail instead of out stealing from somebody else in the insurance industry. So that was definitely a lesson learned, to say the least.
Ouch.
Yeah. Ouch. Ouch.
Really vet your contractors as a small business, I guess, would be your lesson.
Yes, definitely.
Vet them and then vet them again and again and again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Jeff, what would you say? If you knew then what you know now, what would you do differently?
Oh, I think, not that we fought technology, it was just technology was costly, and I think I would have pushed harder to find a way to invest in some of that technology to stay on the cutting edge of that. While we have good technology today, there's more out there, and I think we could be even further along in developing some of that technology if we got out in front of it a little more.
Got it. So for you two, sitting at the 20-year anniversary of Risk Innovations, Jeff, you touched on the fact that this is really an unprecedented soft market for the workers' compensation world, yet we're still managing to outpace the industry and grow at really healthy numbers. How does it feel to sit where you sit right now, 20 years later, after grinding and clawing and all the blunders and the positive and the mistakes and the good, the bad? How does it feel to sit here today, 20 years later, and see the success you've had?
Yeah, it feels good. I'm proud of it. Proud of what we've been able to do, and look forward to even the next 10. So, but yeah, I mean, looking back, there's been a lot of struggles, and like you said, the rate reductions are frustrating, and just some of the things. But we've found a way, whether it's through the staffing or healthcare or trucking or different classes here and there, of finding market and partners to help us get there. So I'd say proud is the one word I would use to summarize.
We were the kids when we started Risk Innovations, and here we are, the veterans, or some of the veterans of the industry, I guess. In looking back at what we were able to accomplish as a team, and really pulling in everybody's opinions and thoughts and working together as a team, I think was critical. I'm very proud that we continue today to solicit everybody's input. We meet as a leadership group on a regular basis, and everybody gets a say, and we constantly encourage input into the company. And I think that was a huge critical success factor, if you will, in how we developed over the years. And that might be the thing that I'm most proud of, is that we were able to do it and do it together in a very inclusive manner. So here's to 20 years.
Yeah.
And maybe to 7 or 8 or 10 more.
Happy 20th birthday, Risk Innovations. You all should
Cheers.
be very proud.
Next year it won't be
cheers
water.
with the raw.
It'll be 21 next year.
Yeah, we'll be able to
Cheers.
drink next year. Well, happy anniversary, Risk Innovations.
Happy anniversary.